this episode of The Latest Science, we speak to Academy Fellow Professor Eddie Holmes from the University of Sydney. His work focuses on the evolution and emergence of infectious diseases, particularly the mechanisms by which viruses jump species. He's been at the forefront of work aimed at understanding how that happened with COVID-19. We've heard a lot of speculation about the origins of this virus. What do we know for sure?
So we know that this virus was most likely present in animal populations in China. We think the most likely animal that it would have started off in would have been bats. We know that bats carried on coronaviruses. And then it probably, can't be sure, but we think it probably jumped from a bat into another animal. And that other animal was probably near a human, maybe in some sort of market situation. And so we're not sure what that intermediate animal species is yet. That needs to be kind of looked at further. But maybe that intermediate animal species in a market then passed the virus to humans, and that's how it's kind of started spreading, probably in Wuhan, and then it's gone global. Yeah, so wet markets, and I visited markets like this a number of times. They're markets where you find live animals being sold. So you go to these markets, you find a different mammalian species in cages kind of stacked next to each other or on the floor. And so the people working in the market are directly next to and working with wildlife. That's the critical thing. These are wildlife. It's not farmed animals. It's not domestic animals. These are wildlife animals. And so the problem is that obviously if that wildlife animal has a virus, it's picked up from a bat itself, and we're interacting with them in the market situation, there's a good chance that the virus will then spread to the person handling the animal, and that person will then go home and spread to someone else, and etc. And we have an outbreak. And that's kind of what we think most likely happened here.
How does a virus like COVID-19 actually get transferred from another animal to a human? Is that common?
Yeah, so we obviously we don't know exactly what happened in this case, and we may never know exactly the precise chain of events of what happened. What we suspect happened, a good kind of model, is that someone in a market situation or would have been handling an animal, and that animal would have had maybe a respiratory secretion that would have the virus in it, like we have the virus in humans is a nasal pharyngeal virus, respiratory virus, and that could have also happened in the animal. And so it doesn't take much imagination that the animal excretes that virus in respiratory fluid. The person then touches their hands, they touch their nose, etc., and then you have an outbreak. Now, again, that's just a model. We don't really know exactly what happened, and we may never really know in detail, but those sorts of events seem very plausible. And so people handling wildlife are always at risk of these sorts of infections. So very simple things. We need to take great care when we handle any wildlife species.
Is it common for viruses to be perhaps carried by or infecting another animal and then also picked up by human? I'd also note that pets, for example, seem not to be at risk from COVID-19 as far as we know. Is this kind of transfer between species common of viruses?
Yeah, so viruses, RNA viruses particularly, viruses very commonly jump species boundaries. It's their kind of general mode of life. That's what they want to do. So a virus wants to find a new cell to infect. And that cell can be in the same species or it can be in different species. As long as it finds a kind of cell it can infect and replicate in, it's very, very happy. And so what we found for many viruses is that they can very commonly jump species boundaries. They're very happy to do that. And for some reason, coronaviruses are particularly good at infecting and jumping to multiple animal species. They do it all the time. And myself and colleagues have sampled lots of coronaviruses from different populations of animals. And we see jumping of species as a very, very regular occurrence. So I was not at all surprised that this thing happened. We've been predicting this for a long time. It really was something that was very clearly going to happen at some point, and it has happened. And it's just the way that these viruses are very able to jump species boundaries. And of course, the way humans live today in this very big, connected, fluid world, they can then, if they do get into humans, they can spread very quickly to a kind of pandemic scale as is happening. Some
of the theories that have been floating around that this virus, for instance, was manufactured in a lab as part of some kind of biological warfare. Have you been able to prove that this is untrue?
Obviously, people get very when they see something so unusual and so seemingly out of the blue, lots of strange theories naturally sort of appear. I think there are a number of really clear reasons to believe this is not in any way a lab construct or a lab escape. And the key things are all the component bits of this virus, all the genes and bits of the proteins that make up the COVID-19 virus, they are all found in natural animal species. There's nothing unusual about it. It has bits of, looks like it's bits of bat virus, maybe pangolin virus. We know all the components are absolutely natural. They're also all natural ingredients. Also, if someone was wanting to engineer a coronavirus, what they would naturally do is take the standard laboratory strain that's out there, and which there are a number of them, and they would manipulate a standard laboratory strain and turn it into what they wanted. And that's not what's happened here. This is not a standard laboratory strain. It looks for all the world, and I'm certain it is, a natural coronavirus that's come from an animal in a natural setting. There's nothing in there at all that is a signature of laboratory manipulation. So I think we can pretty safely put those conspiracy theories to bed.